hereby call the 2297th meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Special reports. Anything, Kelly?
I just have a couple little items. It won't take long. The first is I had mentioned that we were trying to schedule an event, a back-to-school event for SAFE, and that has been set for August 29th from 5:30 to 7:30. We're a part of Ardenwald's back-to-school night, so we will have SAFE information at that event. The next item is we have, there had been a grant award from the Oregon Community Foundation to the Riverfront Task Force that's being transferred to the Milwaukee Parks Foundation, so we're in the last stages of that, and I just wanted to let you know that those funds finally are being approved to move to the Milwaukee Parks Foundation. And the last item is we will be coming back and talking with you more about the Carefree Sunday event, but the preliminary numbers, I just wasn't sure if you had heard anything after the event, but it was looking somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 people participated in the event. So when we come back in September and share more details, I'll refine that for you, but just wanted to give you a quick snapshot.
Great, thank you.
And that's all I have.
That's awesome.
So the SAFE thing again, the 29th?
Yes, it's the 29th. It's Ardenwald's back to school night. So we're doing it in conjunction with them. 5:30 to 7:30, we'll have a tent. I'm going to make sure all of you get that in email. And we're also going to make sure PSAC gets the invitation as well as all the neighbors adjacent to the school. So
What night of the week is that?
that is Thursday.
Thursday. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So
Is that PSAC's night?
that's a
That
great,
probably is PSAC's night.
that might be a problem.
Maybe instead of a meeting.
So I'll work, let me round. I can't change it because we're doing it with them. So I'll have to work on that part.
But PSAC might be this.
I might be inviting them to a party they can't come to.
Third or fourth.
22nd.
Or they can hold their
Yeah.
meeting in conjunction with the party.
Right.
Yeah.
To be continued.
Okay.
And I'll include that in the follow-up information.
Okay, thanks. Okay, on tonight's consent agenda, we have the minutes of the July 16th, 2019 work session, the July 16th, 2019 regular session. We have a resolution making appointments to the Design and Landmarks Committee. We have a resolution acting as a local contract review board, approving the award of a contract with Eagle Elsner, Inc. for the construction of the 2019 SSMP paving project. And we have a resolution accepting the recommendation of the Kellogg Good Neighbor Committee to commit up to $85,000 from the Good Neighbor Fund for landscape work along the east and west side of the Kellogg Creek Treatment Plant. Scott, do you happen to have the names of the people in front of you that were appointed to the...
Oh. Yes, I got that.
I just usually like to... Exactly. Let people know and give them that.
Tracy Orvis and Jacqueline Evan Smiley, who goes by Evan.
All right, there you go. I won't try and repeat it. Congratulations and thank you for serving. All right, does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No.
Then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll just note that there were a couple of grammatical things that were corrected in one of the sets of minutes, but they're not substantive. So with that, I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Audience participation. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community members' statements regarding the city business. Those wishing to speak must fill out a yellow speaker registration card available on the table in the hall and identify agenda item number 4, audience participation. As council has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because of the information provided during the public comment may be new to some councilors, the city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, are there any follow-up reports from the August 6th audience participation, Ms. Brooks?
We did have one item. We had someone come in and talk about getting a ticket when a group of kayakers were at Milwaukee Bay Park. And the follow-up item for that was for City Manager Ober to schedule a meeting with that individual. I believe that's in process. I need to confirm that with her when she gets back. So that's still our intention. I wasn't able to confirm if it had occurred yet or not, so I will check in with her and report back again at the next meeting.
Okay, thanks. All right. So, Ms. Kuehn, Desbala, please.
Right here, right?
Yes, please. State your name and city for the record, please.
Okay. I'm Kiran Das Bala, and my address is 9725 Southeast 29th Avenue, Milwaukee, Oregon.
Okay.
And the reason I'm here today, well, I want to say hi to everybody. And I'm leaving to go again for five to 6 weeks out of town. My children are having too many events going on. So I won't be here. But when I'm not even here, my water bill is very high. So I'm not sure what is going on. That's why I'm trying to see if somebody could help me. Because if I'm not here 5 to 6 weeks and I go every 3 months for 1 month, every 3 months, it's like a clockwise, if somebody has a birthday, then I go and, things go on and on. And I come home and I see high bill. I go, what happened? I wasn't here for a whole month. So, and I used to live in Atlanta, and I had a house just like this house, and my water bill was always $18 a month, and they did charge me for water and the sewer. And here is so if anybody could help me with that, I just want to know why it's happening.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find a staff member to sit down with you and go over your bill.
Yeah, so when I come back, I could call and make an appointment with you, or?
Yes, you can call the city manager's office, and we'll make sure you get connected with the right person to talk to your bill.
Yeah, it's too many. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Everything else is okay, and my ex-husband still didn't give me my $1.9 million.
Sorry. Well, have a good
nice trip. Yeah.
Well, I'm waiting. I know he's in trouble now.
All right, Elvis Clark.
Elvis Clark. I live in the Ardenwell neighborhood in the Milwaukee. And hello, councilors and council president and mayor. I just wanted to touch on the cottage feasibility study that was received a couple of weeks ago, I think. And wanted to note on the conclusions and next steps. They had, we're going to draw up a map of where you could park on street in certain cottage clusters, if they were to, where cottage clusters could be sited to where they could use on-street parking. And I just wanted to make sure that we're not just going to go by a map, that when we have cottage clusters come up for an application to be constructed, that the neighbors in the vicinity will be able to have input on the process, because they have the most ground level knowledge of the traffic and the parking in that vicinity of that proposed cottage cluster, whereas a map is a snapshot and it doesn't always employ the ground level expertise of the neighbors in that area. That would be my one comment or recommendation, is to involve the neighbors in the vicinity. In my case, I'm about 2 or 3 blocks away from the 37th cottage cluster that was part of the feasibility study. So it doesn't really, I don't know.
Just so everyone's clear, I know there's been a lot of confusion around something. So the 4 properties that were studied were literally that. It was, we picked 4 properties that had the potential in the sense that they were big enough, and we picked 4 properties specifically that were very different from each other so that we could explore sort of the range of what a cottage cluster could look like, and so that we could explore both how we could maximize the number of affordable housing units on it, and all of the other things that we are thinking about as we do this. Not one single one of those, to my knowledge, has a developer that's ready to build on them.
Okay.
It was purely an exercise in trying to
Stress test.
to really look at on the ground, okay, what would it look like on this parcel? What would it look like on this parcel? So that we get a sense as a city, because very often in the past, planning processes weren't as deeply specific. We didn't really take it right down to the ground level and say, okay, what would this look like in reality if we did it here? And that's why we did this process this way, because we knew that this form of housing would be new to a lot of folks, and none of us was familiar with it, so we all wanted to know as much as we could possibly know. So there isn't a developer that's currently, to my knowledge, looking at any of these 4 and ready to build anything. So
Well, because the code doesn't allow it.
we don't even have
We have to write code in 2020.
And I think that's maybe the more important point to your question, which is that none of the proposals that were even in there, including using off-street parking to count against the parking requirements, is a code that's up for conversation right now. So all of that would have to go through the regular course of public comment period, through the Planning Commission or through us, through Planning Commission and then through us. So those are code changes that will have to come.
But let's say
before
you do get this map, and you have this map, does the public still have, or the neighbors in that vicinity still have a process to input into the decision whether a particular cottage cluster gets on-street parking?
So that's yet to be determined. The point is that none of this code is written.
Right.
So after we've finished the comp plan, we will begin to work on the code work. And during that process, we will have the same amount of public outreach we've had on all of the things we've done so far, like the climate action plan, like the vision, all of those things, where people will come to open houses, they will have conversations about, and then we will have planning commission meetings, and then we will have city council meetings, all of which will give opportunities to the citizens to be able to give their opinion on and air their concerns. So none of that's written into anything at this point.
We just don't want to miss the boat.
Well, and there
Read your
would,
pilot.
there would also be notice, well, and also when and if there is a proposal, there would be notice requirements for any land use decisions that would have to be made for that.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with the planning and land use process, so forgive me if I don't know all these things. And, the second point on the feasibility study was that one of the sites was on 36th, which doesn't have sidewalks planned for it in the SAFE program, so that those numbers, the cost of that should have been considered in that particular project, since it's not going to get SAFE unless SAFE comes up with the money.
Again, there isn't an actual project that.
I know, but
is a
if
study
there
site.
were, it should have been in the feasibility study, that if you are citing for, if you're going to put cottage clusters in a place that has sidewalks and it doesn't have sidewalks, then that cost should have been in the feasibility numbers.
Fair point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Ranker.
Hey, good evening, Mayor, councilors. Matthew Rinker. I live on Balfour Street in the Ardenwold neighborhood. I guess just in relation to the Hillside Park, just some comments and probably some questions. it was about a year ago that member of city staff and the individual who was at that time in charge of the redevelopment project came to the Ardenwold NDA, and they laid out what they were talking about. And so big thing was, can you give us numbers? I mean, what are you really, really looking at? And at that time, he's saying, well, the manor is 100. It's just going to be refurbished, so it's going to stay 100. So we took that out of the equation. There are 100 in Hillside Park, and so we're like, well, what's that going to turn into? And he said, there's going to be 400 new units. And I said, okay, language can be ambiguous. When you're done building, they're all going to technically be new. There's not going to be any old stuff there. So what's the numbers? Is that 400 new, or is that 400 additional? So are we talking 500, 400? And I came at this question 3-4 different angles, and it always came back to there's going to be a total of 400, not 400 additional. It was always 400. And so I need to talk to the gentleman at county. He says there is a mandate saying if you take one out, you'll put 4 in. So if you take one down, you build 4. You're still looking at taking out 100, and you're going to have 400. Now what he's talking about is you take one out, you're putting in 5. So it doesn't make sense in relation to what he's saying. So I need to talk with him, see if I can get a clarification. If any of you can make sense out of that number, I'd be more than happy to talk with you as well. So this just seems a little bit of a revisionist history thing going on, because the Ardenwold neighborhood was very sensitive about what the numbers mean, and it was very unambiguous with them at this meeting, and it was always came down to it was going to be a total of 400, so I need to hammer that out. Another thing that's very important with the neighborhood is 29th. If you go check it out, it's the vast majority of any traffic there is going to be foot and bicycle. We're concerned about the TSP opening 29th up into traffic out of Hillside Park, Hillside Manor area, and potentially whatever happens with the Murphy site. 29th could connect through into there as well. I don't believe the neighborhood is well served by trying to put more cars onto a very pedestrian and bike-centric pathway right now. So I would just urge anybody involved in this process to really take a careful look at that and see if does that really serve the needs and the best interest of the neighborhood. That's about it. All right, so I guess I'll reach out to the county. I'll probably follow up with some emails, whatever I find, but I just want to clarify that 1 to 4, because it turned into a 1 to 5 tonight, and math doesn't work for me. All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris Ortolano.
So can you pass my material? Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt.
Good evening, Council. Mayor, my name is Chris Ortolano, longtime resident at 11088 Southeast 40th Avenue. And I'm here today to talk about the comp plan update and citizen involvement. I would like to tip my hat to the planning department for doing a fabulous job with providing a comprehensive set of resources with regards to the comp plan update and all the CPAC meetings. I'd like to tip my hat to a gentleman named David Leviton, who's been extremely professional in his response to me, and I feel like I am very informed about the decisions that have been made with regards to Block 1, Block 2, the housing policies, and Block 3. It's all very apparent on the website. However, last Tuesday, I was not attending, but I watched the video, and it was clear to me that there was some confusion about what public participation and citizen involvement meant with regards to another project. In fact, one of the planning commissioners made a remark that it was not clear. So as I was doing some research, I came across something known as HB 100. This is the, SB 100. This is the Senate bill that has outlined a series of, I believe, 19 guidelines, and the first goal is citizen involvement. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, but in case somebody in the city is not, I have provided some additional copies for the manager and the attorney, and I'd like to bring your attention to page 3. Specifically, my questions regard the communication with regards to citizen influence for the synthesis phase of the comp plan update. Currently, there's no data on any of the City of Milwaukee websites about what the data collection, plan preparation, and most notably the adoption process would be. So if we look at point number 3, again, these are guidelines. It's not state law, but it says the general public, through local citizen involvement programs, should have the opportunity to review and recommend changes to the proposed comprehensive land use plans, this is key, prior to the public hearing process to adopt comprehensive land use plans. So my question to the city manager and maybe to the city attorney, certainly to planning staff, is at what point will we, the public, be made aware of what the timeline and elements are for the synthesis process so that we can properly review these different blocks which have been rolled out? But, you know, really I'm here because it does seem like that synthesis process is now being fast-tracked, as stated by the chair of the Planning Commission, who said that we need to reach a conclusion to this project in a hurry, and we have no idea what the timeline for citizen participation is. So my ask of you all is to reflect on these points as stated by the state with regards to goals for citizen involvement, and if somebody would get back to me personally with some guideline for how we can participate in the synthesis phase, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, and I have one more. Ronell Coburn.
Hi, my name is Ronell Coburn. I live on 29th in Ardenwald. And mostly I wanted to ask some questions about the cottage cluster stuff. I just made my first pass through the feasibility study. But my first thing is piggybacking, actually, and we didn't coordinate this at all. My first thing is about public outreach. I really want to ask, without necessarily getting an answer right here, how can public outreach be improved? I see it as the number one problem with all of these different projects is nobody knows what's going on. And at the after party, I called it, standing outside 2 weeks ago, there was talk about, oh, well, people don't read the pilot. I read the pilot cover to cover, and many of my neighbors do as well. And nothing in there, in terms of the language used, just really alerted us that we should be showing up and doing anything. It's like everything is just sort of so nice and pretty and fun that the seriousness of these processes is not imported through whatever's in the pilot. If it's true that people do not read the pilot, then you need to find other ways to reach out, because that's just reality. If the pilot's not working, then it's your job to find out how to communicate with us. I'm a 20-year small business person. I do all my own marketing. You have to figure out what works and do it, or basically, with all due respect, you are failing. And if your paycheck 100% like mine does relied on effective communications, then you would figure it out. So please figure it out. The neighborhood is so upset as they find out what's going on, as they get informed. I also made some errors in a flyer I put out to get people out last week, and then I was accused immediately. The audience was told, you've been misled. The choice of language was horrific. I'm new to this. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know the difference between a public hearing and an information session. I'm looking for information. I want to get the language right. I'm a freaking master's in English and a published author. I know how important language is. But if I'm misinforming people, it's because I'm being misinformed by a lack of information and a lack of ease of availability to it, even as I'm trying to dig in as a new person here, trying to find out what's going on and do it. I also want to be clear, again, like so many of us want to make clear, I'm not anti-development. I'm on one of those beautiful double-platted lots in Ardenwald with a house that's already a unique unique development in the entire city, 2 houses that were joined in the middle over the lot line, and I have extra property that I might want to develop someday. I'm really interested in tiny houses, cottage clusters, all of those things, but it's not if it gets done, it's how it gets done, and its scale and its density. And because I know my time is short and I've got a list, I'll send you an email. One of my main concerns pertaining specifically to Ardenwald, because I know cottage clusters is citywide, is it looks like we're at the nexus of low-density residential with high transit access. And the high transit access areas are slated for much more dense development. And I wonder how those two things are going to get reconciled. Because I don't think our neighborhood deserves to have such crammed lots that are not in scale with the neighborhood that already exists. Surrounded by some of these, it's all concrete down the middle. There's no green space in them. With the noise that will encourage the number of people, it'll be high density plugged into a low density neighborhood because we are a high traffic or transit access neighborhood. So I'm concerned about the intersection of those two specifically for our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, our next order of business, the annexation of public right-of-way in Lake Road and Kuehn Road, A-2019-002, an ordinance. The public hearing on the proposed annexation of the right-of-way of Lake and Kuehn Roads, file number A-2019-002, is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is for the council to take public comment on the proposed annexation and to consider an ordinance to annex properties. Staff will now note the relevant criteria.
I'm prepared today.
Excellent. Like nothing less.
That was a little note from Brett to help me with this part. The MMC, the Municipal Code subsection 1911.03 is where the criteria can be found for this type of process. It refers to both Metro Code 3.09045 and the relevant ORS provisions, which are 22.111 and 222.120. So I won't be fooled again by the script. Back to you.
All right, yes. Does any member of council wish to announce any actual or potential conflicts of interest?
No.
Does any council member wish to announce any ex parte contacts?
No.
Does any member of the audience wish to make a challenge to any council member's impartiality or ability to participate in this decision? Seeing none. Staff report.
Thank you. This proposal is to annex sections of Lake Road and Kuehn Road, which were adjacent to and just east of the Chergino Farms subdivision. A couple months ago, the commission, or the council, voted to annex the Chergino Farms subdivision, and at that same evening initiated by motion the process to annex the section of right-of-way. When we did the Chergino Farms annexation, we did that by the expedited process for annexation, and there was a sense of urgency to get that annexed at that time so that the developer could get his building permits started. If we hadn't done it that way, we would be in a similar timeline to this. The annexing right-of-way or annexing right-of-way is now considered to be county property. So if we were going through an expedited process, we would have needed the county's consent to annex this adjoining right-of-way. This was a process that we could go through without having to go to the county commissioners to get that consent. It's sort of a, we don't usually have to deal with this type of process. Most of our annexations are the expedited type, where it is a single property owner requesting annexation by petition, and we're able to do that.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow why we don't have to go to the county, why we're doing this without the counties.
There are a number of different ways that we can annex land and initiate the process. One is by motion of the council, by a resolution or a motion of the council to initiate the process. And when we follow that type of process, we're required to hold public hearings. We hold a public hearing. We hold a public hearing at the planning commission level and then at the council level to complete the annexation. When we do an expedited annexation, we don't have to hold any hearings. It's just it comes to the council and you take action on it. And there's no stop at the planning commission level. The other choice is to refer the annexation to the voters. So,
But I mean, the property owner, I mean, you know, the usual annexations we have is a willing property owner. So you're saying we can do this without the county agreeing to it?
right. We could annex any, we could initiate the annexation process for any property. Except in those cases, again, you're going to a hearing at the planning commission and then a hearing at the council. So often you might end up with somebody who is opposing that annexation. Right. In this case, the county is not opposing the annexation.
And that's why we can do expedited, because it's unopposed.
Right.
Okay. That makes it more clear. Okay, thank you.
In this case, the Lake Road's a county road, and it will remain a county road until we request that be turned over to the city for maintenance. That may, we are going to be careful about when and how we do that, so that we don't take over roads that we don't want at that time. Kuehn Road, on the other hand, is a local road in the county system, and they don't maintain it today. So we will be taking over Kuehn Road. I have another slide here that shows the extent of Kuehn Road. Kuehn Road extends down to Aldercrest. And Aldercrest is also the boundary of our urban service area, our urban growth management area. After we'd made this proposal, the mayor pointed out to me that we're missing an opportunity to go ahead and annex the rest of Kuehn. And so the question came up, should we try to annex it as part of this process, or maybe do it as a separate process? We thought, let's complete this process, and if the council is so interested, you could initiate that process to continue annexation of Kuehn, which would give us some opportunities for enhanced pedestrian and bike facilities further south, and create some opportunities for more properties to eventually annex. So that was a thought that happened a little late. I mean, it would have been great if we had been thinking about that. The reason we stopped kind of where we did is because these are the properties that abut the Cheragino Farm subdivision. Right. So we didn't really think beyond.
Are those other properties on Kuehn, is there any reason to think any of them are on septic, or they're getting sewer services from?
I don't know
west?
for sure, but okay. I think that at least some of them are on septic.
Are on septic still?
So what I'm suggesting here is, following the action on this annexation, if you're so inclined, you might want to then through a similar motion, direct staff to pursue and initiate an annexation process for the rest of Kuehn. I'm going to complete my presentation here. The approval criteria, again highlighted in section 191102.3, are that the site be located inside the urban growth boundary, be contiguous to the city limits, meets those ORS requirements, consistent with comp plan policies, conforms with Metro Code sections, and complies with city zoning and plan map criteria. The findings address all of those criteria. So our recommendation is to go forward with this annexation, annex the right-of-way, apply the zoning as set forth in the, on the adjoining properties. Basically what we do is we rezone the right-of-way to be consistent with the zoning that is adjacent to, so it splits down the middle if it's two different zones on either side. In this case, everything's a low-density residential. And then, and that's the end of my presentation regarding this annexation. But I would ask that if you're so inclined to make a motion to initiate the annexation of that section of Kuehn. Let's talk about that after.
I was going to say we would do that after we finish this hearing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Have we received any additional correspondence on this topic?
No correspondence. No testimony at the Planning Commission either.
No, it's all no. Does anyone wish to comment on the proposed annexation? You sure? All right, then I'm going to skip that whole paragraph. The city is the applicant for this annexation. Does anyone wish to speak in support of the application? Blah, blah, blah. Here we go, 3 minutes. And staff doesn't need to respond. All right, does council have any questions for staff?
Well, I didn't understand some of the maps and what they were telling us, but they're not really dispositive to the issue before us, so I won't take up time trying to get those explained to me.
The exhibits that were attached, they're the survey maps that say what property it is that's being annexed.
Well, okay. I mean, but then there's ones that are showing blocks of, anyway.
The ones that we need to be concerned about are those that are the attachments to the ordinance. And I believe there might be 4, and although I haven't looked at it in a while.
There were about 6, but, and there were a couple that didn't make a lot of sense to me, but again, I don't think they're really dispositive of the,
There's one that's sort of a total overview, and then there are the tax lot maps that each tax lot map highlights the portion of the map that's being annexed.
Well, so like RS, where's our numbers? I'm not seeing our numbers. No.
There are 4 or 5 different tax lot maps that touch portions of this right-of-way.
Okay.
So each tax lot map has a highlighted portion of the right-of-way.
Okay. Okay.
The Department of Revenue requires these types of maps to be sent to them to highlight what properties are being annexed. Although in this case, there isn't any property that there's going to be revenue generated, but they do review every survey and make sure it's accurate.
So the highlighted yellow section that's on each of those, in that sequence of maps, that is just where the maps would all line up to give you the overview if you were the Department of...
Right, but like Exhibit B has this lot 12-51 that's highlighted, that's that's
That's just
got Yellow Road, and then it's got this other block, 12-118. What's that? And why is it relevant?
It's because there are multiple maps on the, in the assessor's collection of maps that touch portions of this. Like and so what the graphics did was just take every one of the assessor's maps and highlighted the portion of road that's shown on that map that touches a tax lot. So there might be some overlap because that same section of right-of-way shows up on more than one tax lot map.
Right, right.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. If there are no further questions from council, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor
Aye.
on the proposed annexation? I didn't finish my... Aye. Opposed? None heard. Passes unanimously. Public testimony portion of the public hearing on the proposed annexation for the right-of-way in Lake and Kuehn Roads is hereby closed. Is there any council discussion? So I'll briefly talk about why I called Denny to ask why we were only annexing to the point we were annexing, because when we had the original conversation that we were not going to annex the roads at the same time we annexed the property, I was assuming we would annex all of Kuehn for a number of reasons. One, people don't know that they're in or not in Milwaukee, that the road's in or not in Milwaukee. So when we repave Kuehn right up to this arbitrary place in their mind and then don't repave the rest, they'll be like, what the heck's going on?
No, we put an entering city of Milwaukee sign there, and then they know.
But the people on this side of the road
Tend to put
are
them
in
on those
Milwaukee.
types of roads, so we put them on busier,
No, we
like
put 'em on.
Lake.
We don't. The other reason is that if you know that road down at the bottom of where you think down at the bottom of where you can drive, there is a flight of stairs that is generally speaking overgrown with blackberry. That route could be an outstanding bike pedestrian route to allow that whole neighborhood, Aldercrest neighborhood, to get into downtown Milwaukee safely, because Aldercrest does not have bike pedestrian facilities of any kind. Lake Road kind of sort of does. So it would be a large improvement on the transportation, the multimodal transportation system for our region if we were to go ahead and annex all the way to Aldercrest and then as one of our projects fix, and I don't think it would be a giant project, but fix that little, whatever it is, 30 yards, 20 yards of stairways and blackberries so that bikes and peds could more comfortably use it. So that was my thinking as to why it would make more sense to annex it all, and we kicked back and forth whether we should postpone this and add it in or do this and then go back, and we decided it costs the same amount of money either way. So we decided just to finish this. Since it's done, get it done. And then if all of you are interested, we could make a motion to start proceeding to annex the rest of Kuehn Road. So that was my thinking.
So can we deal with this first, and then we'll deal with that?
The rest of the properties there are all in the county?
The rest of the properties on the, what would it be, east side are in the county. The properties on the west side up to the creek, roughly.
Well, is there an arrow up there?
You can see the line, right? On that
So
map right
it
there?
currently is a county road that's inside the city? So
It's a county road that's on the border of the city.
So the highlighted portion, the tan farmland there. That's the
Right.
Cherokee Farm subdivision. So
Right,
that is,
but then past that-
everything south of that would be in the county.
That's what I was,
Yeah,
way down to here?
correct.
that's all. in the
Both
county.
sides of the road.
None of that's in the city.
But at the top side of the road, the left side of the road is in Milwaukee,
Yeah,
according to the line that
Correct.
I'm looking at.
There's a little bit
Dark
where
line.
both sides.
Right, a little,
And
yeah.
then somewhere it's just the east side,
Yeah.
and then both sides are out.
Any further discussion about this particular right-of-way annexation?
No. Okay.
No.
No.
All right.
I'll move for first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing into the city limits the public rights-of-way of Southeast Lake Road and Southeast Kuehn Road adjacent to the Cherokee Farm subdivision and the portion of Southeast Lake Road west to the current city limits. File number A-2019-002.
I'll second.
Has been moved and seconded for first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing into the city limits the public right-of-way of Southeast Lake Road and Southeast Kuehn Road adjacent to the Cherokee Farms subdivision and the portion of Southeast Lake Road west to the current city limits, file number A-2019-002. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Ms. Brooks, would you please read the ordinance by title only twice?
An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing into the city limits the public rights-of-way of Southeast Lake Road and Southeast Kuehn Road adjacent to the Cherokee Farms subdivision and the portion of Southeast Lake Road west to the current city limits. File number A-2019-002. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing into the city limits the public rights-of-way of Southeast Lake Road and Southeast Kuehn Road adjacent to the Cherokee Farms subdivision and the portion of Southeast Lake Road west to the current city limits. File number A-2019-002.
Thank you. Mr. Stoffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Beatty?
Aye.
Councilor Parks?
Aye.
Councilor Heisey?
Aye.
Council President Faulkner?
Aye.
Mayor Gamba?
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0, ordinance 2176.
So on the other, I guess I'd rather we had a work session and discussed and had some input from staff about the costs of rehabbing that road, you know, the potential for annexation of properties along that road, as well as the, you know, bike access issue. I think we need to know more about what liabilities and costs we would be incurring for the city and what the potential is for it to be a move that helps us annex sort of that gap, because now we do have a pretty clear gap between the, yeah.
And I'm also interested in learning more about the properties that are on either side of that road. You know,
Right.
If there's clear incentive there, not, you know, beyond just, you know, bicycle and pedestrian facilities improvements, I think it would just make sense to have a little bit more information about what that means for the residents and.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think a staff report and consideration and looking at all the different aspects of it, just like we did with this one, even though we kind of knew what was going to go on.
Because there's some really
Good
interesting
background information.
Like, some of these maps show some pretty interesting details about what may or may not be additional right-of-way that goes through some of those properties, and maybe, you know, getting a little bit more information about what other opportunities beyond the one you've identified. I mean, it looks like, you know, east-west connection could be improved as well.
Yep.
Well, and to annex, I mean, like if there are some on septic, and then they're not allowed to replace the septic when it fails, but does Wes already have a line there? Would the county, you know, make them annex with us, or would the county let them just annex to Wes? All of those questions. I mean, that's a...
Well, in Cherokee Farms, what happened is that line is being given to the city, right? So they built a line. If we annex the line, my understanding is Wes would give us the line. I could be wrong. But that's something we could check on. Does that then mean if they have a septic system that fails, would they then need to
Annex,
hook up, much
yeah.
like in the Nisi area?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
That's a really interesting idea, actually.
So obviously, it's not a giant rush. There's nothing,
No.
it would be probably good to explore it before we get deeply into the TSP. Because I think there's some opportunities, as have been pointed out, for the TSP. So that would be, I would say, the back end.
Okay.
All right. So the next item is the renaming of 43rd Avenue in Keil Crossing Subdivision and Ordinance. Public hearing on the proposed renaming of parts of 43rd Avenue to Keil Street is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to take public comment on the proposed renaming of part of 43rd Avenue. We will have a presentation by our Associate Engineer, Tessie Prentice.
Good evening. So I am here about the street renaming for Keil Crossing Subdivision. Currently, it has the name of 43rd Avenue, which has become confusing for safety personnel because of the direction of the street. And so there's been a request to possibly change it to a different name. It went to the Planning Commission, and they liked the suggestion of Keil Crossing, which kind of honored the original owner of the property back from 1888. And so the other choice was to extend a different cul-de-sac later, but they preferred this choice. And so I am here to see if we could get the name changed to Keil Crossing. I got to say it right. Keil Crossing, yeah.
Is that the name of the street or
I'm
just
sorry,
Keil Street?
Keil Street.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the
development
It's the subdivision. Yep. No,
I have to say, not you personally, but I told you so. I brought this up at the time this thing came forward. I'm like, it makes no sense to be calling one of those 42nd and one of those 43rd. It just was, yeah. So I'm not surprised that you're back.
Right.
I think it makes sense.
Have we received any additional correspondence on this topic?
No.
The developer's not even here? Nobody? Interesting. Okay. Does anyone wish to comment on this proposed amendment? No. All right. I will skip a bunch of this. Does council have any questions for staff?
No, it was a good staff report.
What's that now?
I said it was a good staff report.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll let
Answered all
Wendy.
my questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll let Wendy know. She wrote it. So I can take no credit.
And there's houses going up now, so I assume they're
Yeah, the
been
hope was
notified.
the hope was to get the road renamed before they started moving in and
Good idea.
correct this. Yeah. Yeah, it makes it easier on them.
Yeah, to make bank loans interesting, right? You get a bank loan on one street and your house is on another.
Yeah.
All right. So if there are no further questions from the council, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And heard. Public testimony portion of the public hearing on the proposed renaming of part of 43rd Avenue is hereby closed. Is there any council discussion? Oh, come on, this is rich.
I got something.
Okay.
So I'm all for honoring our past. There was something about the part where this was, the previous owners were these settlers that
The
just
original
stuck in my
owners.
craw. The original owners.
me too.
They were not the original owners. I just had to say that.
Point well taken.
That's true.
I feel
They were
better
the
now.
white settlers.
Yeah. They were the-
That's all.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion if we're ready.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you. I move for the first and second reading by title only and adoption of the ordinance approving the renaming of a portion of Southeast 43rd Avenue to Southeast Keil Street.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded for first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance approving the renaming of a portion of 43rd Avenue to Southeast Keil Street. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously.
My coworker Kyle will be very glad to hear that we are going to pronounce that correctly from here on out. Kyle.
Yep, yeah, that's what I was told, it's pronounced Keil, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We believe you.
Stress on the
Figure
I.
out those IEs and EIs.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're not
Oh, we
actually
gotta,
done.
we have to,
Okay, so,
we might be done.
Ms. Brooks, would you please read the ordinance by title only twice?
I'd be happy to. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, approving the renaming of a portion of Southeast 43rd Avenue to Southeast Keil Street. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, approving the renaming of a portion of Southeast 43rd Avenue to Southeast Keil Street.
Mr. Stoffer, would you please poll the council?
Counselor Beatty.
Aye.
Counselor Parks.
Aye.
Counselor Heisey.
Aye.
Council President Falconer.
Aye.
Mayor Gamba.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0, ordinance 2177.
All right.
No, thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Great job. Arts Committee membership expansion, a discussion. This will be led by Jordan Imlaw, and it looks like A is here as well. Chair A. So Jordan, I assume you got the memo there that you need to make the pilot a lot less nice.
I did, yeah. You'd make it more, I guess, explosive and
Something.
some sort of, bait and switch.
Scary.
I don't
Make
think
it-
we have
make
that
it
in the
scary.
budget. Explosives are not in the budget.
Look, I get a thesaurus, get some big words going. sound intimidating. Thanks for hearing us tonight. We're just coming to you tonight with a discussion about expanding the Arts Committee by 2 committee member spots. We interviewed some really good candidates at the end of July last month, and there was a consensus afterwards, more so not necessarily based on the qualifications of the candidates, but more of the needs of the committee, that 2 extra positions would really help further a lot of their goals and objectives, and then also, as A pointed out, just kind of mitigate any sort of volunteer fatigue from all the activities that they're all involved with, and make sure no one's running themselves ragged.
Yeah. We have expanded a lot of the work that we're doing, but the committee's still quite small. So adding committee members will allow us to continue to support the things we're doing now and grow from there.
And so during the course of the interviews, we identified 4 people that were very qualified, and should you want to proceed with expanding that, we would come to you in September with 4 names for appointment and an ordinance adoption, or amendment, sorry.
So we're not doing that tonight?
No, I just attached a draft so you could see what it would look like should you move forward with it.
So as I recall, the original art committee had
10.
as many members before.
Yeah.
Had one more than this, yeah.
Oh, that's right, one more. It was one more. Yeah, it's always been a committee that's like a doer. There's a lot of doing that needs doing.
A lot of doings that need doing. Okay.
Don't you love my
We'll quote you on that.
really
Yeah.
impressive use of the vocabulary?
It's very clear.
Yeah,
That was the point.
we understood it. Yeah.
So I think it's brilliant. I think
Yeah.
it absolutely should be. I was concerned when we reduced it, and I didn't think it made sense, but
Well, I guess I wonder if we can't write an ordinance that allows it to be
Up to.
so that we're not boxing ourselves in to always have to get to 9 or even 10 if we want to put 10 on it, but just, 6 to 10 or 7 to 10 or whatever.
Or not
And not-
exceeding 9 members or whatever that
Then what-
number is.
how would not that they have
I don't know how you-
big legal votes that occur, but how would you determine whether or not you had a
Quorum.
We've been kicking this around because I like that idea as well, just because the nature of this committee seems to be that it accordions a little bit. Sometimes it's a small focus group, and sometimes it needs to be a little bit bigger, and so can we build that flexibility in? So I really love the idea of trying to puzzle, since we'd be coming back, how do you establish, preferably, an odd number? I think we all would like to have it be odd, whether that's up to 9, 7, or 9. I think the same quorum would apply. All the rest of the bylaws would still apply, your terms, and so the quorum would just slide. It would still be a majority of 9 or a majority of 7. So we would just need to go in and check those things to make sure everything scales appropriately. But if you all are open to that idea, and you all are open to that idea, I think it would be great, and I think it would just recognize the history so far that just gives the Arts Committee the chance to be the size it needs to be. So.
Yeah,
fine with it.
me too. Yeah.
Yep, I think it's a good idea.
I will also tell you that one of the 4 people you interviewed contacted me, and she was very confused by the message she got from staff after the interviews and what the status of things was. So it might be good to touch base back with them after tonight's meeting and sort of explain what's happening.
Yeah, we sent a note. We had to kind of navigate the process because there are 4 good candidates, and we didn't want to turn anyone away without, it was sort of an awkward situation for us to write to, because theoretically, council could have said, no, keep it at 7. Right. And we didn't want to promise we would then have to go back to the interview panel, and that event would have had to say, tell us 2 names to recommend to council. So we do plan to circle back when we have this direction and prepare our staff report, because I think we plan to come back pretty quickly on the 3rd, because I know the committee is eager to get these new members online, and so is council, but we need a direction to revise the code, and so it sounds like we have that. We'll bring it back, and we'll be communicating with interviewees.
Great.
Okay.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Great job.
Thanks.
Okay, comprehensive plan, block 3, policy review, a resolution. This will be introduced by our senior planner, David Levitan.
Did you move stuff in there, or I didn't move it in there?
You're making a great face, Scott.
Making a great case.
Face.
Face.
He's trying to see those little letters.
That's the face he makes when you're going to mess up his files.
Navigating the S drive.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mayor, councilors. David Levitan with the Planning Department here tonight to talk about a resolution pinning down the Block 3 goals and policies for the comprehensive plan. It's going to be a pretty brief presentation tonight because this was just before you 2 weeks ago on August 6th. I would like to correct the record as far as some information that was presented during that meeting. As of the time of that meeting, I was actually in ravishing Rochester, New York, and not in beautiful Buffalo. So, both great cities, right on Lake Ontario, amazing places. So just wanted to clarify that.
So noted. People in the Lakes region of the country, thank you.
So anyways, as we've discussed previously, there were 4 topic areas within Block 3, public facilities, natural resources, environmental quality. Natural resources and environmental quality have kind of been combined, and then also urban design. And the urban design policies, just for whatever reason, at every single meeting, no matter the body, we never get to them. So a decision was made a few weeks ago to pull those out and not move them forward with this resolution so that the CPAC and the Planning Commission and ultimately the council can have some additional opportunities to review those. We are going back to the Planning Commission on August 27th, so next week, to discuss those, and then we're currently scheduling for the next CPAC meeting, which will focus on urban design and then on a little bit of the synthesis process, kind of circling back on some of the items that were mentioned during the public comment period, specifically Mr. Ortolano, and I'm happy to reach out to him about what the plans are for that synthesis phase. It's kind of morphing and evolving, but we want to make sure that we have an adequate amount of public involvement.
Are we planning some kind of an open house or anything for that?
We were not planning an open house for that just because it is a little bit different. We're kind of more moving things around as opposed to developing new policy language. So we tried within the 3 blocks, well, the 4 blocks, including housing, to have a number of different public events and to let people weigh in on all of the different policies that were being developed. But, if there is direction from the council or from others on ways that we can improve that during the synthesis stage, we're always welcome that advice.
Can I add something real quick? Originally with synthesis, we thought we'd be making some map changes at that stage, which would have necessitated that type of additional outreach. Now I think synthesis is strictly going to mostly be a organization and restructuring process to move the policy package forward. So comp plan will sort of take 2 steps. One, the policy plan will be adopted, and then with whatever code fixes we are going to make, we may end up doing some comp plan amendments, map amendments with that.
What about the cottage club, the hubs? Because we haven't really had a discussion of the hubs.
Of the hubs?
The neighborhood hubs?
Again, there's going to be code changes required for hubs. We're going to actually talk about hubs as part of the synthesis process. We're going to fold that back in terms of a policy and approach standpoint. But primarily, I think hubs are going to be dealt with as code. How do we, and some map changes, whether the, I'm not going to get into detail right now, but we've actually talked a little bit about it could be some rezoning to neighborhood mixed use, a few of them. A few of the hubs are in neighborhood mixed use areas, and then there's currently a neighborhood commercial zone, the CN zone, where everything is a conditional use. We might convert that into a hub zone. So we've got a bunch of different ideas that we've been kicking around, but we haven't had discussion with the CPAC or Planning Commission about it. We're going to start that process soon.
Okay.
Great. And so just a little bit of a recap of our community engagement. We had 4 CPAC meetings. We had an open house on July 15th. It was a little bit different from the town halls that we've had in the past, just given where we were at in the process, but we had about 60 people attend that, which for the middle of July is not a bad turnout. An online survey where we got 200 respondents that actually went through the whole survey, I think 197. Included in your packet tonight is kind of the draft community engagement report for Block 3. And so there were a number of questions at the CPAC and from the Planning Commission and also from the Council that they tried to get into within that engagement report. So we're happy to talk about that. And then we also had focus groups with stakeholders from our Latinx communities and also from a number of different environmental organizations, specifically on the natural resources and environmental quality policies, as well as a number of work sessions with the Planning Commission and City Council. As I mentioned, Denny was here just 2 weeks ago going through the policies. What we've done since then is we had a work session with the Planning Commission last week. They got to the item at about 9:50, so they were maybe a little bit brief in their discussion because they actually had to make a motion to extend the meeting. But they had some good comments. We had new work sessions with them before, so we'd already worked through a number of their comments. And then we have scheduled dates with the PC and the CPAC to review the urban design policies. As part of that, we will be discussing the neighborhood hubs. We actually just received neighborhood hubs implementation strategies memo from our consultants, Angelo Planning, I believe just yesterday. And so we're currently reviewing that, but that definitely, it's discussed within the urban design policies, and it's something that a number of our CPAC members, originally came out of the vision. We have a number of carryovers from the Visioning Advisory Committee that have a very, stated and vested interest in seeing this through, and they want to make sure that we get it right and that we actually make it, a component of our urban design and our urban forum. So we'll definitely work that into the urban design discussion. So with that being said, we are proposing for the council to adopt a resolution pinning down the Block 3 policies with the exception of the urban design policies tonight. As we've stated with previous blocks, there will be an additional opportunity as we look at the compendium of all these different policies that have been developed over the last 18 to 24 months, looking to see where there's redundancies, where there's overlap, where things should be moved into a new chapter. So we'll be doing that over the course of the next few months before we come back to the Planning Commission and City Council for hearings to formally adopt by ordinance at least the policy component of the comprehensive plan. And then, as Denny mentioned, we would go through and do map amendments in 2020, kind of as we're starting to do code work and as we're starting to consider zoning map amendments as well. Kind of shift that map work and have it kind of running concurrently with a lot of the actual zoning code and zoning map work. So with that, our major questions is the council ready to adopt a resolution pinning down the Block 3 goals and policies, or are there additional items that you would like to discuss? If you look in your packet, the clean version of the policies are included as an exhibit to attachment 1. And then if you want to see the track changes that have been done over the last 2 weeks, reflecting council comments from August 6th and Planning Commission comments from August 13th, those start on page RS 137 as attachment 2. So they are pretty limited. We didn't make a whole lot of changes just because we didn't get a whole lot of, recommended changes from either the City Council or the Planning Commission, but we can accommodate additional things and still adopt the resolution tonight, or if there are extensive changes, we would potentially need to come back at a later date. So with that, I'll hand it over to the council.
Thanks.
I'm good.
Yeah. I appreciated the incorporation of the comments from our previous conversation. I can see them.
Anything?
Nope.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
As you go back through this, I did notice a couple of typographical errors that you just want
It'll all get
look for.
cleaned up.
It was my first day back from beautiful Rochester, New York.
You were just so stunned by the
That's
beauty.
okay.
I just,
They're minor, and they don't change anything.
Yeah.
But,
no, well, we can look back
just
through there, and we always do, and especially when you're dealing with the track change document and trying to turn that into a clean document at 3:30 on a Friday afternoon. Sometimes you miss a couple
I figure you like puzzles, so I'll just tell you I saw 3 of them. So.
Right.
Sounds like.
Well, I will make a motion if we're ready. I move to approve the resolution pinning down the proposed goals and policies in Block 3 with the exception of urban design of the comprehensive plan update, final versions of which will be adopted by ordinance during the synthesis stage of the project.
Second it.
Yep.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution, pinning down the proposed goals and policies in Block 3 with the exception of urban design of the comprehensive plan update, final versions of which will be adopted by ordinance during the synthesis stage of the project. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, there used to be a famous burger place in Rochester called Shaler's.
I did not go to Shaler's.
You did not go to Shaler's?
You have to go back.
Is it still there?
Yeah. Was it in the Ontario Beach area, or?
I have no idea. I went to college in Syracuse, so it was something I heard about, like Shaler's, great burgers. And
We do have a world-renowned children's
Yeah,
museum.
what did they put in those burgers that it traveled that far?
Right, really?
that was back in the day when I ate burgers, and I would have eaten one, but now I don't eat burgers.
They have a world-famous children's museum, the Strong Museum, for anyone with young children, and they also have a 1906 carousel at Ontario Beach, which was very nice, and my children definitely enjoyed. So,
Don't get too excited about Rochester. We need you here.
Yeah, no matter
And
how
I think-
beautiful it is,
I think
whatever.
my house would probably go for about $105,000 there, so.
It's sounding more and more attractive.
Oh.
I'm not sure why.
And then you walk outside for about 5 minutes in the summer, or alternatively
Or
in
the
the winter.
Keep
Yeah.
that front and center.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, the snow. Whew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Denny.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Denny.
Denny.
Good night.
All right, you ready to do the announcements? Join the Llewellyn neighborhood at their annual concerts at Ball Michelle Park each Wednesday in August at 6:30 p.m. The next concert will be held tomorrow, Wednesday, August 21st, featuring Norman Sylvester, the original Northwest Boogie Cat. Also join them next week on Wednesday, August 28th for their final concert of the year featuring the Lucky Boucan Band. Not sure how I pronounce that. Thursdays in August are also a great time to go see a concert in the park. Join the Ardenwald-Johnson Creek neighborhood at their annual concerts at Ardenwald Park each Thursday in August at 7 p.m. The next concert will be held this Thursday, August 22nd, and feature Lincoln's Beard, a high-energy country rock and roll band. Also join them next week on Thursday, August 29th for the Inner Limits Band, who play upbeat blues, rock, and funk. Have fun with friends and neighbors while enjoying a banana split or a sundae at an ice cream social at Beach Bum Day at the Milwaukee Center on Tuesday, August 27th from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. The fee is only $2, and all proceeds benefit the Milwaukee Center's nutrition program. Keep in mind that city offices and the Leading Library will be closed on Monday, September 2nd for Labor Day. The next First Friday event is September 6th from 5 to 9 p.m. Be sure to walk around downtown, including Main Street and 21st Avenue and all the streets in between, to visit with local businesses and vendors.
I believe the Lashbrook Brothers are playing at Beer Store that First Friday.
Cool.
They are, yes. Nice.
The annual On Tap Uncorked event returns to North Clackamas Park on Saturday, September 7th from 1 to 9 p.m. The event features craft wineries, breweries, and distilleries in North Clackamas and beyond, all in a beautiful rose garden setting with food and entertainment. Early bird tickets are only $15 with a souvenir glass included. The event is a benefit for Meals on Wheels. Sign up today to volunteer on Saturday, September 14th from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at the annual North Clackamas Watersheds Cleanup. Volunteers will gather at North Clackamas Park and then head out to several sites in the Kellogg Mountain, Scott, and Boardman watersheds to remove trash from our creeks. For more information about each of the events mentioned, please visit the city's homepage at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov.
So 2 events this weekend. This Saturday is Johnson Creek Watershed Council's big creek cleanup, where you get to wade into the creek and pull all kinds of crazy stuff out of there. And this Sunday at the Farmers Market is Sustainability Sunday with the Milwaukee Environmental Stewards Group collecting styrofoam to take over and be recycled. They'll have a big truck, so come by with, you can either come carrying it, or you can drive up Jackson Street in your car and just throw it at them and put it in the truck.
Great, that's going to happen.
I will note that they were
Just got
there.
rid of my stash. That's too bad.
Well, I gave it at
Saved it for so long without recycling it.
They were at the market this past Sunday handing out info, and their info sheet said that they take any number 6, not just styrofoam. So like number 6s can be like hard plastic that you get prepared foods in and stuff. I tried to find that online. They had a printed page of, different kinds of number 6s, and there's like 4 categories that they all take, and it's not just styrofoam. Unfortunately, I could not find that online, but I am going home and going through all this stuff in my basement to see what number 6s I have, because
County has a really good page on that, but
do they?
I think so.
I'll look for that. Other special vendors that will be there for the Sustainability Sunday, there will be somebody somebody from the county recycling. The master recyclers will have worm bins and talk about using worm bins for composting. There's a couple of other, Scrap will be there and Free Geek will be there. They will not be taking materials, but they will be sharing info on their services and how you can drop off materials. And the one I'm sort of most excited about is the Xerxes Society is going to be there to talk about planting and gardening for pollinators. So this Sunday at your Milwaukee Farmers Market.
Nice.
I had a couple of things I wanted to point out because they just came out today. There was published, a couple of things. So in August, the 2019 homeless point-in-time count was published by the county. Some of those numbers, and I called the county because I had some additional information I wanted to find out. But so total homelessness, according to the January 22nd, 2019 point-in-time count, has gone up 9% in Clackamas County. I called the school district because I wanted to hear, because the numbers that the county puts out aren't quite as clear on student homelessness in the North Clackamas school districts. Last year, the homeless liaison served 369 students who experienced homelessness throughout the school year. 178 of those live in Milwaukee. And Katie Ray is always really helpful for providing sort of information, and also just such an asset to the school district. I also wanted to mention that just today, Portland State University, and Dr. Zapata was one of the authors. She was on our Housing Forum conversation back in December. You'll remember her. Today, that report by the Portland State University Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative and Northwest Economic Research Center put out their report today. And they actually estimate, so their methodology is slightly different than the county's methodology, where they actually go out on one night and try to capture a snapshot. Their study is a little bit different. It goes a little bit more in depth, including in conversations with the schools, and they count 5,928 homeless. That's their estimate for Clackamas County.
So does their count, so I heard something on NPR today where they were talking about the people doubling up, and they're trying to do a count that actually includes those. Does this count?
It does.
Try to do that?
Yes, it does try to capture that. It also tries to capture, that information from the school districts, so not just North Clackamas schools, but obviously the other school districts and the county as well.
Great. Thank you.
And both of those, I'll share links out. I think we should update sort of our, resources page. So I'll reach out to Erin Maxey and make sure we get links to those resources.
Great. And then last but not least, we're closing on the deadline to apply for the Milwaukee Leadership Academy, which will close on September 2nd, although if you are a high school student, 16 or older, we have some wiggle room for applications to come in a few days later. We know that students who are getting back to school may not know about this before September 2nd. It's really an opportunity for people in the neighborhoods and all over the city to learn more about how the city works and what it does, and there's more information online at milwaukeeoregon.gov/Leadership Academy.
Good job.
Great.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
A second.
No one's going to second.
I know you guys are waiting.
We all wait for you.
Aye.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.